Hello, Athens. Welcome to the Classic City Business Podcast. Our mission, to connect our community to the local business owner. If you love Athens and love supporting the people behind our businesses, then you're in the right place. We get to know the people behind the sign. Some are legends, others are on their way. You're listening to the Classic City Business Podcast with your friend, your host, all-around great guy and owner of Generations Commercial Cleaning, John Gluck. So get ready, buckle up, hang on, here we go. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Classic City Business Podcast. I am your host, John G. And today we're connecting our community to the people behind the sign at
My name is McKinnon Galloway, and I am a social media influencer. My platform is bringing awareness to the deaf community and bridging the gap between the hearing and deaf community.
Yeah, listen, thank you so much for doing this today. I got to admit, I'm a little excited about having this conversation. What I want to do is I want to actually start at the beginning. So you were not born deaf, correct?
Correct.
So I've heard the story, so obviously I know this. I want you to share this with our audience about what happened and where we found out that you were going deaf and how all that transpired.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to be honest, it would take 10 years to tell the whole thing, but I'll try to get through it in the next, little bit. So when I was 16, I got hit in the head with a volleyball. I went in for a routine MRI and they found 2 brain tumors. And they said I was going to go deaf by the time I graduated high school. It was obviously a very big shock. I got diagnosed with this rare illness called NF2. And basically it's called neurofibromatosis type 2. And it's tumors that grow on nerves throughout the body. They're benign nerves, but they're not cancerous. But the problem is that they grow around into the nerve. So it shuts off the nerve, which is what it did to my hearing. Since then, I have been through 15 years of experimental chemotherapy. I had one grand mal seizure where I got diagnosed with epilepsy and it was 10 minutes long, which is like in the seizure world, that's like a very long time. And I ended up having 4 brain surgeries that total about 50 hours of brain surgery in itself. So I've been fighting for this for a very long time. And unfortunately, there's no cure. So I've been on, phase 1 experimental trials, which are outer rats and into humans. I have been through it, like anything they come out with that has somewhat of hope for a cure, put me on the trial, because one of the things that bothers me the most is I've seen the kids that got really involved in my community. And I see the kids very affected. And luckily I had my childhood, but they didn't. So I want to help out in any way that I can.
So did you say 15 years? That's how long you've been
16.
Dealing with this? 16 years. Wow.
Oh, well, I've been through chemotherapy for 15 years.
Yeah, I mean, that's a long time. That's my mom actually passed with cancer, and I remember when she went through it, and how, of course, it was, I guess it's a little bit different, but I'm imagining that and thinking about the duration of the time and how sick did you get during all that?
So it varies. So actually the chemotherapy, I went on one chemotherapy for a long time. It was every 2 weeks. And a lot of people think that chemotherapy is just IV, but it comes in different forms. It comes in like a pill form or it comes in IV. This one was IV, but I went through it for a long time with that. And that one I actually tolerated pretty well. But I went on this experimental trial for one summer, and I was so sick that I barely don't remember the summer. But they came through with like these hazmat suits, like I couldn't use the restroom like anybody else. It was so toxic. So what they do in a phase 1 trial is they keep giving you the dosage until you have a reverse reaction. So you do have to sign like I could die on this trial. It was very intense. It didn't work, which, was terrible. But I was on to the next thing. I did have to have brain surgery after that, where I lost my hearing in my right ear. I was 21 at the time. So that was a difficult adjustment for me. But it wasn't until last year that I got very, very sick and I almost died going through 2 brain surgeries. So that one was very difficult.
How old are you now?
I'm 30.
You're 30, okay. And so this just happened last year. I was just trying to think about that decade of your 20s. Is just there was so much that was happening. Did you lose your hair or anything?
So I did lose my hair, not completely, but my hair did thin out for that experimental trial that I told you about, that phase 1. But not all chemotherapies you lose your hair, but I did thin, it did thin. And last year I went on steroids, and a lot of people don't know this, but I gained like 20 pounds. So that wasn't fun. But a lot of people don't understand this, that like with steroids over a prolonged time, like my hair almost completely fell out. Like it was so thin. And it was, it was very hard emotionally last year. So let me explain last year. So last year I actually traveled to Russia when we could go there. And I woke up on New Year's completely deaf. Like I was hearing
both ears
the night before. Well, I was deaf in this year when I turned 21 and had that brain surgery, unfortunately, because where the tumor is at. So think of like a tumor in the nerves, like a balloon, right? And think of like a wet noodle on that balloon that's dried. So you go to peel that noodle off and it tears. So unfortunately, there's not nerve regeneration yet. So it's very difficult. It's, your life or your hearing is what it comes down to. And if you're dead, you don't have your hearing anyways. So it's, it's one of those things of like, I hate to say it, but it's an easy choice. It's a choice you don't want to make.
Of course it is.
I have to choose to lose my hearing. And that's difficult in itself. I remember, so last year I woke up and I guess the tumor had grown and pressed on that nerve and stretched it to where the nerve went out. So I was completely deaf, and that was difficult. So I went back on steroids, and the steroids shrank the tumors. So some of my hearing did come back for a little bit. And they told me, they said, McKinnon, we could keep you on steroids for another 4 months, 6 months, and you could have your hearing. Or, we could go in there and get this out. But at the time, my face started to go numb. I mean, as you can see, I do have facial paralysis. And a lot of it's come back because it was very bad. But at the time, it was more important to me for me to save my face, because at the end of the day, my hearing was going anyways.
Yeah. No, I wanted to ask you that. Like, so was there a process for you in terms of acceptance of, because I had read or saw that you were very musical. You loved to play the piano. I think it was in one of your reels. And that you miss that part of your life. So at some point you have to come with terms like, this is happening. This is who I'm going to be. And what did that journey look like? Because that didn't happen overnight.
So this is actually really interesting. So it took me about 7 years to accept what was happening, because I was young at the time. And I didn't really know the process of how to accept this and everything like that. So piano, I still have a piano. I'm going to try to learn how to play a song deaf on the piano. That's my goal.
I can't wait for that. I'm going to be tuning in.
It's going to be fun. It's going to be fun. But so piano, singing, I love music. And so I feel like you get to the point, and I got to the point last year that, okay, so my eyes rolled inwards after my last surgery, or my second to last surgery last year. And I went deaf. So I woke up, my eyes had rolled inwards, and I was deaf at the same time. So it was definitely kind of a struggle. But I realized that, like, okay, I'm going to be the best deaf person that I can be. Maybe not the best deaf person out there, but the best deaf person that I can be. Okay, I'm going to be the best person that has their eyes and words that I can be. I'm going to be the best person that has facial paralysis that I can be, because it is what it is. And I either accept it and move forward in a positive way, or I drown in that, and that's not going to help me at all.
But there had to be a journey to that. Was there anything that specifically that happened, or that you just realized? Because you said it was a few years that you came to this. So was there anything that was like, look, was there anybody that, so for example, let me set this up. So you have a platform that you're using to help others. Was there anybody like you in your life that, as this was happening, that you were able to look up to, that had gone through this before and helped you accept and process everything that was happening?
So I had my community, but there's such a variation in the community that I was honestly scared to see what could happen to me, if that makes sense. Because,
yes, like not wanting to go to the doctor.
I'm one of the mild cases. So it scared me to become a part of, even though I eventually became a part of the community, and they're wonderful people. But at the time I was younger and I was scared to become a part of that. And I also thought, like, I have my friends, like, why? I didn't understand at the time how important a community was that got it. And so at the time I was like, I have my friends, like, why do I need to become friends with people? That's the worst part of my life. That's the hardest part of my life, for us to sit there, and misery loves company. And like, I don't want to go in that road. So I didn't quite understand at the time how important it was to be with people in a community that got. My mom was my biggest support system. She's absolutely amazing, even though she does not have this. So I'm very lucky that I have her.
So yeah, that's exactly what I meant. That process of acceptance, right? And so at some point, you decided that, actually, I'm going to get ahead of myself a little bit, because your platform actually came after you were asked to do something that was pretty cool. You were a representative. But we talk about, I guess it would be considered an honor to, what was the platform that you got to represent?
So I actually got asked by this foundation to become a national ambassador. And I knew at the time I would have to get up and speak in front of thousands of people. And I had to decide, okay, am I ready to go public with my story? Am I ready to accept? Because unfortunately, you have people that have negative comments. Am I ready to face that? Am I ready to put myself out there no matter what happens? It could go really well or it could go really bad. Like, I have no idea. So I got to the point that I realized, and this is why I do my platform now, that like, this is bigger than me. And I think that that's what helps me the most. Is this is not about me. This is so much bigger in helping others. And when I started helping others when I was 25, I started public speaking. And when I started helping others, it helped me.
What was that like for you too? Because it's not just about being ready to tell your story, which is a big part of it, but what about public speaking? I mean, speaking in front of thousands of people, what was that like for you? Were you comfortable on just the speaking
Very
side, being in front of people? Yeah. So it's
very nerve-wracking. I get very nervous actually when people stare at me. So it was very nerve-wracking. But like I said, like at the end of the day, I knew it was more than me. I knew it was bigger than me. I knew at the time I wasn't physically affected, and I knew that like I could give parents hope that I had a great life. And I was like, I worked so hard to have that life. And I was like, I wanted parents to understand that were newly diagnosed, or people that were newly diagnosed, that like, you can have this and be happy. Like, you can absolutely have this and be okay. So my nerves and everything else, at the end of the day, I spoke in front of a lot of doctors as well. I went to Paris and I spoke in front of a huge doctor conference. And I've spoken to a lot of other places in front of doctors. but I wanted to make it known that like these people aren't just a number, like they're people too, and like they appreciate the work that you do. Because I think at the end of the day, it's important for doctors to understand that like we do appreciate their work. Like they have given us like somewhat of a future. Like, yes, I know, unfortunately, with my illness, that some people, unfortunately, and some really awesome people have passed away from this illness. But they do give us hope because there's not a cure yet. So I'm sure it's frustrating when all these doctors see people over and over and over again where the test results or tumors have grown, like we don't have options, like our faces are going out, our eyes rolling inwards, like that's tough on them. So I wanted to thank them and give them hope at the same time to give families hope.
Yeah, I did get to see a little bit of that speech. I found it on YouTube. I was really curious when I found out you had done that. And I thought you look very polished, like you were a professional. So I was curious if there was any nerves, especially for a young person to be representing such a big organization and then in front of so many people. But I'm not going to let this slide. You went to Paris to speak?
Yes. So I went to Paris to speak, and every time I've actually spoken all over. I've spoken in Miami, I've spoken in San Francisco. Like I've gotten a lot of opportunities to speak. I've been on a bunch of news places here. This past year, I actually was on People on their digital platform. So that was really cool.
That's very cool.
That was really awesome.
Like talking about making it work for you. That's awesome. Those are incredible opportunities that you get to not only serve other people and recognize other people and give other people hope, but you get to see some amazing places. So that's awesome. That's really awesome.
Yeah, it was definitely really cool. And I think that, as far as the nerves we've kind of talked about, I shake every time before I go up there. Like I'm so nervous. But the good part about me speaking about myself is that it's not a subject that I have to study and prepare for. Right. It's about me. So when it comes to the Q&A, which I absolutely hate, when it comes to the Q&A, like it's me just talking about myself. So like there's nothing that I'm not prepared for, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, no one's going to know you like you do. So you don't have to like memorize something or forget. You're like, oh, what was that again? So I'm wanting to jump to the next question I have for you, but I want to go back a second. You said you really don't like the Q&A. What makes you nervous or weird about the Q&A part of it?
So like when I'm not prepared for something, like for instance, like on my platform, I'm very raw, I'm very honest. Like that's a huge part of me is that for instance, I've gotten some, and I'm grateful for this. I've gotten some requests to do a platform or give sponsorship about hearing aids, and I'm completely deaf. Like I can't use any technology. It's just not for me. Like that's just my nerves are cut. So anything out or doesn't work. And so I declined it, even though sponsorships is money and that kind of great stuff, because I don't represent things that aren't me. I represent completely honest, like I want it raw, like I want the truth in a positive way. And I think that that's very important in a lot of ways. I'm so sorry, I forgot the question. Can you repeat it?
No, it's fine. This might be the answer to the question, actually. No, I was asking you, you said you're like kind of funny about the question and answer part of it, the Q&A. So what makes you nervous or a little apprehensive about that part of it? Yeah.
So with the Q&A, this is a great example. I was in San Francisco and I was on a panel. This was after I spoke. I went on this panel, with all these doctors, and it's so funny because like here I am. There's like all these like famous doctors, and like these doctors I was on the panel with are like world-renowned doctors. Like they're incredible. So I'm like up there, like, like here I am, just like, okay. And I had prepared, they gave me questions to ask, or that they were going to ask me. So I had prepared what I was going to say in a professional way. But if you ask me something, I'm very raw, right? And so it's maybe not what the audience always wants to hear.
Right.
So they're up there and they're like, what can you do to tell people? They asked me a question out of nowhere and I was not prepared for it. And they're like, what advice would you give families that are newly diagnosed? And I just reached into the mic and I was like, you got to get help. You got to get counseling. Help yourself. And everybody started laughing. And I was like, maybe that wasn't the right answer.
Well, sometimes the raw answers are the right answers, right? So, and that's what I mean. That's what's so cool about people like you who take something that's happened to them and then they, create a platform where it helps other people. And I say that because literally that was the raw, real answer. Like, you need support around you. You need to get help. And it probably came off. I mean, I'm sure people laughed like, what was that? That's funny. So that's cool. I was just kind of curious about that, because,
which is great because they're going to remember it.
that's exactly right. And apparently you did too. So before I jump, I was going to ask you about the platform and everything. But before we do that, obviously you've done a lot of traveling. What was your favorite place? Like, where did you go? Like, oh man, this is beautiful. I'd love to go back.
Man, to be honest, I've been very fortunate and I've traveled to a lot of places. This is really cool though. I went to Costa Rica. My fiance is actually from Costa Rica and he's an amazing support system. I have to throw that out there. But I went to Costa Rica and I worked saving sea turtles for a summer. Yeah, it was really cool. Like, I love the ocean and I love animals, they're really great because they can't talk and give any type of mean words, which is nice. Yeah. But I loved it. Like, it was giving back. I love that a lot. But I've been, I just got back from Greece. I've been to Italy. I've been to Hungary. I've been to Germany. Like, I've been to a lot of places. And my favorite thing about visiting somewhere new is I think the cultures are so beautiful. Like, even if the country is not like physically that beautiful, I love the cultures and seeing the cultures behind everything, because I think there's always something beautiful about the cultures and the way that people live differently than you.
Do you have a favorite place? I mean, is it Costa Rica? Is it Paris? Is it unfair? You don't want to answer that question? See, this is the Q&A part that gets you all flustered.
I'm stressing. I have no idea. Like, I wasn't prepared for this.
No. So really, it sounds like you just appreciate the journey, like experiencing new things, experiencing different types of new things. So that's a fair answer. I'll let you off the hook, okay?
Thank you.
All right. So let's talk about this really cool platform that you have. And I'm going to tell you what attracted me to it. I'm as a hearing person. But I want to know what your heart, what your mindset was going into it, the purpose behind it all.
Yeah, so I mean, great. I love this question. So I actually started when I went deaf. I was like, I really want some sign language gear, and I was like, I want to represent. And so I went looking for some sign language gear and I couldn't find any. And I was like, okay, well, my family's all entrepreneurs. And so I was like, okay, if it's not out there, create it yourself. So I actually started an Etsy store where I was just like, that's like a whole thing, but it's more difficult than you think. And so I started an Etsy store and I ended up, making some cool shirts and that kind of stuff for myself. And I was like, okay, like, this is really cool. But I actually dove into deaf technology because I'm part of the hearing community. And even though I know sign language, my community does not. Like, my community is the hearing community because I had full hearing growing up. And so I was like, I need deaf technology to be able to communicate with these people. Like, I'm big on not feeling isolated. Like, I'm big on not that that kind of stuff. So I started an Amazon store. I did the deaf technology. I actually worked with Google a little bit about some devices that might not come out, but we talked about it a lot. And then I worked with this guy. He's from India. He's coming out with these glasses that project captioning, which is really cool. So anything that I could see, I got my hands involved in. Maybe it was fear-based before my last surgery, before I went deaf, because I was like, I have to be able to make this transition as easy as possible. So I started talking about it. I actually started a Deaf Tech. That was my first platform, was Deaf Tech. It was not that Deaf Chickenka. So that was my first platform, was Deaf Tech, and it talked all about deaf technology, because I started talking to my community that I had gotten so involved with over the years, and they didn't know about any of this. And I was like, this can make your life so much easier. Like, they had so many struggles that they were feeling isolated, because even though you're in the room, you're not a part of the conversation, which is difficult. And so I was like, let me make your life easier. So I kind of got passionate about helping others in this way. And then I was like, you know what, like, this could be bigger. This platform could be, because there's so many things that when I went deaf, even throughout the community, that are throughout tips and advice that I had to learn the hard way, that I was like, I could give this to people. I could give the hearing community just a few signs, basic signs, to help bridge that gap. And I was like, this could help people, because there wasn't one central place. I couldn't find it anywhere where the latent deaf community, we're between worlds. Like, we jump between worlds, and there's not really a place for us. So we have to pick. We're either a part of the hearing world and feel isolated, or we become part of the deaf world, which is a culture we weren't, completely born with, that we didn't grow up with. So we're kind of isolated in that way as well. So we're isolated in both worlds. And I was like, we need a place for us, that can bridge both worlds.
It's funny. I don't think that most people, especially in the hearing world, like the hearing world by itself, even consider that being a in-between place between the deaf world and the hearing world. There really is its own little community, is it not?
Well, I actually have a funny fact about that. So because of people not protecting their ears in clubs or concerts or whatever, by 2050, there'll be 2.5 billion people who have some sort of hearing loss. Yeah, it's a growing community. It's a lot more growing than you think, because people don't protect their ears. And so this headphones, everything else, people listen to music too loud. They do a lot of things like this that they don't realize, that they're hurting themselves. And so it is a growing community. So I was like, we really need a place for us.
So I was going to tell you, I told you that I had my perception as a hearing person when I came across it. I shared with you earlier, off mic, so to speak, that I have a brother and a sister in Illinois who are interpreters for the deaf. And so when I grew up, I kind of grew up around the deaf community. And so I learned, just by being around the community, some sign language, just enough to get me in trouble. Like, I'll be at a restaurant or something, I'll see somebody, and so I'll say, hi, my name is, and then, go from there. And then all of a sudden they just start going, why? And I'm like, whoa.
They're so fast. It's incredible.
Whoa, yeah. So for me, when I came across it, that was my initial thing. Oh yeah, I'll pick up some signs. Some of them I remembered, some of them I just forgotten. And I thought, well, this is a cool place. So while I'm sure, and I was very curious to hear what you had to say, that it's a platform for people that are in transition or in between those two worlds. As a hearing person, I started following it originally just because, hey, this is like a tip of the day, so to speak. I can learn a new sign and practice it. So I don't know. And I was curious whether or not you even realized how many hearing people follow or are curious about your platform just from that perspective. Did it even cross your mind?
Absolutely. So
Okay.
absolutely. I'm trying to bridge the gap between the latent deaf world and the hearing community because our communities are usually hearing, right?
Yeah.
And I think at the same time, it bridges the gap between the hearing community and the deaf community. But I have a really unique perspective because I've been, a part of both worlds. I know what it's
Right.
like to be completely hearing, and I know what it's like to be completely deaf,
Yeah.
which is not common. So I thought that, I can see the hearing world, the deaf perspective is that sometimes it's frustrating, and I don't speak for all deaf people, so this is just
Right.
myself, is that disclaimer. So the deaf perspective is that, it's frustrating sometimes a lack of accommodations for the deaf world. Lip reading is very hard. Like it's so hard and it's so exhausting. But a lot of people that you come by just think that you can lip read, and like I'm really terrible at it. But a lot of people just automatically think that's some superpower you get when you're deaf, and like that's not the case. We struggle to lip read because that's our only option. And with the hearing world, I can see the hearing world's perspective because it's just that knowledge isn't there to educate. Like it's not that they don't care, it's just they don't realize the struggles that we go through. So I was like, you know what, like I want to target, it would be, and it's been awesome. Like in my community, I've gone places and like my friends are signing, like they're understanding like how to communicate with me better. Like it's bridging that gap, and it's been so amazing to see. So actually, while I do have a place for the latent deaf community, I do target the hearing community to help understand the bridge, a world we were once a part of.
So that was one of the things, interestingly enough, that I was curious about when we jumped on this call was, are you going to try to read my lips? Do I need to, make sure that I'm articulating, looking at the camera, that kind of thing. And so the audience knows that are going to be viewing this on YouTube. You got a little text caption that's actually
That's
reading
nice.
it out.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank it. But what I was hearing you say, and I thought about this, I kind of went back, to my teen days. I remember one of the things that one of the deaf people that was in that community made a comment to me, and I don't think I really got it back then. But one of the things that they appreciated about me, my sister and brother, especially, that we engaged with them. And I say that because I think that a lot of hearing people, when they see somebody out and they're deaf, even if they're with a hearing person, they're almost afraid to have a conversation because they're scared of understanding, or they get really big and animated. It's kind of almost like act like a fool. So I love just the aspect of, as a hearing person watching your platform, to, hey, look, it's okay, so they're not going to bite you or anything. It's I guess at the end of the day, and I think this is true across all communities. I think that people are scared of people who are different than them, and so they'll find themselves. I've heard a story, and I think it actually may have been you, about going to a restaurant and signing with their friend, and somebody just staring, like, and you're like, what's going on? So do you have any crazy stories like that where people just don't know how to interact and it became weird?
Every day.
Every day?
Every day. But I think that it gives me an opportunity to educate, and it
Yeah.
gives me an opportunity to, like, it's okay to ask questions, especially with my facial paralysis, because, like, I mean, you're viewing this on YouTube so you can see it. So, like, my facial paralysis used to be like this. It was really bad. Like, I was completely paralyzed. And so, like you said, people who look different or are different, if people don't understand, it's not that they don't care, it's they don't understand, like they don't want to be offensive, but
Right.
they just, if they don't understand it, they're afraid of it. And I try to educate that, like, I've been on one side where I look like me, and it's the culture that signing's kind of cool now and all that kind of stuff, which is one side. But you have to remember, I've been on the complete other side where my eyes are inwards and my face is completely paralyzed. And a lot of people were afraid to look at me, or they were afraid to look at me, or because they just didn't know what to do, right? And I think they thought it was rude to stare, and they were very scared of it. So that was very isolating as well. But the signing community, people are interested in that, but they don't want to ask about it yet. So I try to sit there and talk about it. Like, it's okay. Like, it's okay to try. Like, it's okay. Like you said, I don't bite. Like, I just appreciate you trying to include me. If it doesn't work, then it doesn't work. But like, I appreciate the aspect of you trying.
Yeah, it's interesting to me, just human nature of being just so shy. It's like there's this general rule that my mommy taught me was you treat people like you want to be treated. So they're not different. Whether I don't care whether it's deaf. I've got a friend of mine. In fact, we did a podcast with who's blind, and he was talking about going to the movies and they have a hearing aid where they actually do the captions and they talk through the movie. And
that's cool.
So and he talks about it all the time. He just wants people to treat him like anybody else, but sometimes they're just afraid. And he's a real funny guy, so he cuts up a lot and he makes people feel relaxed. But I guess in my mind, everybody looks through, every experience, I guess, through their own lens. So I'm trying to picture that, what that would be like for somebody who's especially going from the hearing world to the deaf world of, I don't know. I'm finding myself stuttering over my words here. I'm thinking through this, but it's like having experienced something, right? And then going to a world where you don't have it. Speak to that a little bit. You mentioned it earlier, but what do you miss most? Is it the music? What do you miss most? How about that? We'll just simplify it.
I mean, I definitely miss music. I definitely miss music. I love music. But I definitely miss being a part of the conversation. Like, I definitely miss my friends, like communicating with them all the time and it being easy, like especially when it's like group settings and parties and music's playing, like you're kind of sitting there, like you're there. Like I said, you're part of the room, but you're not a part of the conversation. And it was something that I wasn't used to. I mean, I'm a very loud person and I'm very lively and I'm a very huge extrovert. So it was something for the first time I was very introverted that I wasn't used to. And it made me sad because, I definitely like miss my fiance's voice a lot. Like I miss like how easy it was. Obviously, as we go along, it gets better, but I miss, everybody's learning sign, which is great. But I took sign before, a lot before I went deaf, but, not everybody did. So they're learning it, which is awesome. But that's actually one of the reasons I started the platform was I was like, okay, like what way can I get to like my friends and community that they can interact with me so I'm not so isolated? And maybe that's selfish, but like I was like, I need this. So how can I help? How can I help myself? But then I started doing it and I was like, wow, like everybody feels like this. Like this is so much bigger than me. And I was like, this is so cool. Like this is a way that I can give back, being me, and I feel comfortable doing it. So I was like, if there's things that I miss, of course, but at the end of the day, like I have hope that one day I can hear again, but right now I can't. And you either accept that, like I kind of said earlier, and make the most of it. I can't all the time sit there and go back and mourn. Don't get me wrong, like I'm a human, like I definitely give myself time to process, but you can't give up on life just because an obstacle is in your way. And I can't all the time think, or it's going to get me in a bad place, all the things that I miss.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about some of the friends things, something specific, but I want to see if there's a positive twist to this because I kind of sat on that whole difference between hearing and then being deaf and, knowing both worlds and missing it. But is there an advantage that you find like sometimes you're like, man, I'm so glad I can't hear? Is there any kind of scenarios like that where you're
On
grateful in a way?
planes, it's bliss with the crying babies. Like I just put on my mask and I go to sleep. My fiance sometimes stays awake with the TV going. And so it's really nice that, I can just put on my face mask and I just go to sleep. So it is really nice when it comes to sleep. He gets up in the morning and I don't hear him, which is so nice. So sometimes, like for instance, I'm going through radiation soon, and we were talking about Christmas. If the family can come over here for Christmas, he's like, if you don't feel well, you can just go lay down. Whereas beforehand, maybe I would hear them and not feel well and not be able to sleep. But now it's like anybody can come over, they can be as loud as they want, but it doesn't affect me. So when it comes to sleep, there's a huge advantage. There are huge advantages of being deaf at some times. So like there are advantages. I can focus a lot more. I'm a photographer, so I don't have any distractions. I'm actually better at my photography because yeah, I'm better at it because I just have my, with my vision and stuff, I see the world in a different way and I see the world more visually. So it's made me a better photographer. So there, like I will say yes, there are some advantages.
Yeah, the reason why I asked you the question, when I was growing up, there was a deaf guy that was in our sphere, our world, I guess, and he had gotten hearing aids, and he hated them. He goes, I don't. I'm glad God made me deaf. I don't want to hear. He's like, he had wanted nothing to do with the hearing world, which I thought was funny because he's like, the sound of his wife's voice drove him nuts. I mean, it was a bunch of stuff. So I don't know. I just thought that was a funny story. I was curious if you had one. So that's good. So I did want to ask you this. I don't want this to slip by me, so I'm going to ask you. So, um, particularly when it comes to your friends, do you, I should say, do they make an effort to learn signs to be able to communicate with you better? Do you feel like they make an effort to stay in your life, in your world, and pick up on some of this stuff, or is it just sort of like they don't, whatever?
So I'm kind of lucky in a way that I have this tablet and it picks up really well, right? So a lot of my friends, they have learned some signs, but a lot of my friends don't really need to at times. But I will say that they have tried to make me feel included. They have, even if they don't know the signs, like they're over there doing charades. Like they go out to dinners at quiet restaurants for me. Like they make an effort to text me, ask how I'm doing. Like I will, how is this easier for you? Can we go over here? Like the signing, while, a lot of my friends just had babies, so they kind of have an excuse because they're at that age. So I'm like, it's okay. Like right now, you're off the hook. But they definitely make an effort to support me and however they can. If it's not learning the signs, they've supported me in every other aspect.
Yeah. So you said you're 30, so I'm a few years older than you. So back in my day, we didn't have these, and I didn't even think about that. So your friends, literally, you could have phones in your hand, you could be texting back and forth. But I was just curious about like, and again, every deaf person is different; they have their own experience. But I was just curious about you personally, if you had, feelings of wanting friends to be more proactive in learning sign language, et cetera. But it sounds like you do have a really good group of core friends in your life, in your circle.
I definitely would like more people in my community in general to learn sign language, which that's why I started the sign of the day, because I was like, we're so busy in our worlds. You know what I'm saying? We're so busy, but I'm like, if they could just learn And I'm not over here signing philosophy and talking about Socrates. Like that is not, I'm like coffee, like you're ready to go. Like things that people need in this world to communicate with somebody in a more efficient way.
Right.
And I try to do these basic signs that if they just learn one sign a day and they know 30 signs or 300 signs, I think there's like 5,000 signs in sign language. But if they know 300 signs, it's going to be beneficial. Like it's going to be huge, because if you're across the room, my tablet's not going to pick up and I can't see your lips, but I can see your signs. So I was like, if the community or the world just knew a few, then it would help everybody a little bit more.
This was a little bit before your time as well, but I had some friends that were actually interpreters. That wasn't my brother and sister, but it was a couple that was their mentor, really, in terms of learning sign language. But they would talk about going to the drive-in. So for those of you 30 and younger, a drive-in is where you should drive a car and watch a movie on a big screen. You literally sit in the parking lot. But they were talking about, like, they would go to the concession and they could see the person in the car, and they were like, what do you want to eat? I don't remember. And so they would sign, popcorn or whatever. So there's advantages to being far away and being able to sign. So there's some fun little advantages too. I think that's it's kind of puts the fun in it, I guess, if that's a way. And I love thinking and looking at life as a cup that's half full, right? So if you're a positive person, there's always these different spins. And that's what I like about your personality. I think that you're fun. And you were talking about this, and a lot of your reels, I wish we could do a drinking game based on how many times you laugh at yourself. Like you'll say something and you'll exactly
You'd be
just
so
like
drunk.
I know. I'm saying. But I love that you have this positive attitude and you laugh about it. It makes it like I don't know. You want to come back for more. I want to learn another sign because I want to hear that laugh. I don't know, something goofy like that. But at the end of the day, I love what you're doing. I love the platform. I think you're serving more people than you know. I really do. And I think I was talking to somebody the other day. We were talking about likes and comments and how it helps the algorithm, which I'm sure you're fully aware of. That's an important part of what you're doing. But a lot of people, they see something, they just scroll. So I just think there's probably a lot more people that are benefiting from your platform than you're even probably aware of. So I just wanted to give you that compliment, I guess.
Thank you. To be honest, I know nothing about algorithms. Like I don't really know anything about social media. Like I put up these videos and I was like, let's just see where it goes.
Well, I didn't see. I mean, most of the likes you got, I think they're like in the thousands or whatever. So I honestly thought that maybe that you were very intentional. So this literally is just from a servant's heart. Like you're literally just serving the community. Here it is. Do whatever you want with it.
I was like, like at first every platform, maybe at first I got like 80 likes my first video, and I was like, I'm just going to keep going. Like I don't know where this is going to lead, but I know it's going to help. I got a few people that reached out to me like, this really helps me. So I have this story. So, and it's quick, I promise. So I have this story that there was this old man on a beach, and he looks over and he sees this kid that's picking up a starfish and throwing them into the ocean. Sorry, this is one of my favorite stories.
Keep going, yeah.
And there's this little kid that's throwing the starfish into the ocean. And the old man looks up on the beach and there's thousands of starfish. And he goes to the kid and he's like, there's no way that you could pick up all these starfish, and save all these starfish. And he's like, it won't matter. And he looks at the starfish and he's like, it matters to this one. So I think at the end of the day, if it helps one person, it makes a difference in this world. And this world is very negative, unfortunately. And I think it needs some positivity. And I'm excited to be able to get that.
Yeah, I like that analogy a lot. And that's what I was about to say. Even if it wasn't 80 on your first one, it's just reaching that one person that you have this impact on that would make it all worth it at the end of the day. So what is your favorite thing about what's going on with you right now? Is it this platform? You said you're a photographer. Tell us a little bit about that. What's this photography thing all about?
So I'm really excited about my photography. So when I went deaf, I was a product photographer. I mean, I was a portrait photographer for a very long time. I mean, I've worked in Manhattan for a fashion magazine. I've worked for magazines here. I was very involved. But I was so nervous to start my own business. Everybody kept telling me, McKinnon, start your own business, start your own business. And I'm like, I don't think that I can, I had this fear of failure. And I was like, I just don't, I like working for somebody and I don't think I'm good enough. I don't know how to price this. So when I went deaf, my job I couldn't communicate that well. So I kind of had to walk away from that because
pushed out.
Right. Wasn't a good fit. So I was like, I have to make money. And so last year I started my own photography company and it's going really well. It's gotten me really busy, but I did a lot of portrait photography and I started getting into product photography because I was like, I can be deaf. I can have my eyes inwards, facial paralysis, whatever, and I can still do this really well. So I tried it out and I'm actually really good at it. And so I was like, this is something. I'm actually pretty amazing. But I was like, I could be great at this. So I started doing it and I've gotten blown up with it. And I took a bunch of courses on branding. And so I do product photography with branding where I help new businesses. I help people in professional and personal world is like my platform. So I've been really excited. And I just found a website designer yesterday that he's actually deaf too. And so I'm building this whole MK Studios it will help you pretty much start or rebrand your business, which is really exciting.
So I'm going to emphasize amateur, but I love shooting as well. And my favorite thing to shoot is outdoor portraits, like taking stuff that doesn't belong, like, I don't know, big chair in the middle of a hayfield, that kind of stuff, or, shots, whether it's around a barn or something, woodsy. I love that stuff. My second favorite thing is sports photography. I love shooting, especially football. Imagine that. I told you all about the whole college football thing here in Athens. We're really big about our college football around here. But something I never thought of being a business, and I guess it would have to be product. So are you going to locations to do the product photography, or is this something you're doing in the house somewhere where you have like a little studio and like a little, booth set up? What does that look like? I mean, that's very different to me.
Yeah, so product photography, the great part of the product photography is I don't have to leave my home. So I have my studio and people send me products and I take pictures and I give them, everything. Now, if it's branding, like I'm working with this bridal studio, I'm working with this bridal place, like I will go to her bridal place. So I do a lot of stuff locally as well. But for product photography, and this is common in the product photography world, is that, they'll send you something, you take pictures of it, and then you send it back. So it's really great because you don't have to go on location, like you don't have to filter in gas or anything. There's a lot of other factors grabbing your camera equipment and, it's a lot of stuff. Now I do headshots because I do branding. So I will have to go on locations, which is, I love headshots, but because one person dealing with families and little kids, it's great with one person. So I'm very good at communicating with one person. But I was like, product photography is really awesome because there's so many fun things that you can do with it. And so I started building backgrounds and you have to build like my closet is just filled with product stuff. You have to build a lot of stuff, special effects and all that kind of stuff. But it's really fun because you can be so creative with it. And it's always something different, which is exciting.
Yeah, I'm going to go a little nerdy on you here for a second. So audience, please forgive me if this is too nerdy, but what do you shoot with? Are you a Nikon girl, a Canon girl?
Oh, definitely not Nikon.
Oh, wow.
I've always been a Canon girl. So my father was actually a photographer. And so I got all his camera equipment. He has, and if you don't know this, camera equipment is like stupid expensive. And so,
Yes.
oh gosh, it's so expensive. And so I already had his lenses, and I was used to shooting on Canon because in high school I was the sports photographer. I know you talked about sports, but I was a sports photographer. And so I had all those lenses and everything. And I was like, like I already have all this inventory. I don't know Nikon. I'm used to Canon. I love Canon. Canon's great. Like the company's great with like cleaning your lenses and everything for free. They're a good company. I'm sure Nikon is, but that's just, it's kind of like, are you a Mac or Windows person? Like they're both great, but you
Yeah.
have
So
preference.
my analogy, guys out there, it's kind of like when you have your power tool, whether it's the, Home Depot, Roby, or, DeWalt, or Milwaukee, you keep buying those tools because you have the batteries for them. So with the camera world, and I almost don't want to say this, because I don't want to get beat up by McKinnon here, but I've always shot with a Nikon. So anytime I would get something else, it would always be
Oh,
Nikon. I know. This is,
oh my
I know,
heart.
I know. She just hit end call right now. Um, no, so I mean, it really is. Everything's so expensive. So if you have a lens, they're interchangeable. You don't want to have to go buy all new lenses or whatever. So I get it. Is all I'm saying. But don't judge me too hard. I told you amateur. I'm an amateur photographer. Obviously, you know, if I was a professional like you, I might shoot with a Canon. I don't know.
I mean, Nikon's great. Like Nikon, I've seen some people that have Nikon. I actually started on film, so that's a whole nother story. But Nikon's great. Yeah,
Are
I did.
you old
I
enough?
know,
Are
I
you
know.
old
Like I know
enough?
I'm 30, but like I did do film, so I learned how to appreciate a picture and go through that whole darken process and rolling the film and all the jazz that these kids don't understand. Taking a phone, taking a picture, it definitely had like a lot more to do where you get that one picture. So
Yeah.
that's how I started, which was really cool.
Yeah. So you got a
But
good
actually made my own
foundation.
camera, which was fun.
Yeah. So
But
does that
Nikon's great. It's just like I said, Windows is great. I'm that girl.
you don't have to apologize about if you don't like Nikon. It's okay. It's okay. I'm a Mac guy too, and I just love because especially with shooting, you have your phone and iPad or whatever. You take a picture and it links. Everything's connected. I don't know. I just like the compatibility with the Mac. So at least we have that in common. Don't judge me too hard about the Nikon thing. I'll try to get myself right and spend some money or
I don't
something.
know.
That's funny. So that's your favorite thing. That's your niche. Is definitely the product thing. You love doing that. And that's going to be where you think your future is with photography stuff.
Absolutely. Like it was so funny because you know how you go to college and you're like, oh, like I'm gonna study this because this makes money. And I was a photographer at the time as well. And I had a side job with photography and magazines and everything, like I said. So I was like, photography is not gonna make any money. Like, why would I do that? So I went to college, and it's so funny how you end up doing the thing that you love. And I just, I work
You
to
should be
live.
so lucky.
I don't live to work. That's not my philosophy. No, I think yeah, I work. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Okay, make sure I didn't get that backwards.
Right? Yeah.
But I think that, in photography, I was like, I can build a business. And like I said, I could expand. It's kind of like the Deaf Chicken Cave. Like I created this thing called the Deaf District that has a sign language store, the technology, and the Deaf Chicken Cave. So my parent brand for my photography is MK Studios. And then I have the web developer I'm working with, the branding company, and the product photography company. So I can expand on this kind of stuff. And it's cool because I can go into so many different things and I get bored very easily. I'm a very creative person and I get very bored. So I was like, this is something different all the time, which I really love.
That's true. Yeah, and I get that. I'm the same way, and I don't know if that's a personality type or creative type. I'm certainly not as creative as you are, but I get bored with stuff too. I need something new, a new project, something different. I don't know that I could do any kind of assembly line factory work. I would shoot myself within a year. It's the mundane is just I couldn't do it. So I totally get that. But in terms of your platform, if there was anything that you would want the community to know, that hey, this is what we're doing, this is what we're about, what would that be? If I said, hey, look, you got 60 seconds to tell everybody what you are, what you're about, what you're trying to do, what would that look like in a paragraph?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's important to realize, kind of like as you said earlier, that just because somebody's different doesn't mean that they don't have value, and it doesn't mean that you can't get along with them or they become one of your best friends or something like that. I think that so my thing that I would tell the community is try to get outside of your comfort zone, try to see new people because they have a lot of value and they have a lot of things that, you know, we don't bite. We're very, very normal. And I think that there's a lot of people that are deaf that have amazing personalities that you're really missing out on because of that few.
Yeah, and great sense of humors. I mean, it's almost like they're people. They're all different. I say that kiddingly, of course. It's like sometimes people, I don't know, it drives me nuts. I actually, you know what? I'm not going to tell that. I don't have permission to tell that story. I wanted to share a story with you about somebody else. It wasn't somebody who was deaf, but people spoke to them in a way that was really, you won't be able to appreciate this because you're going to read this in text, but they would talk really slowly and loudly. And it was because they spoke a different language, like literally like English versus Spanish. And you're like, what are you doing? They're not deaf. They're not blind. It's like, because you talk slower doesn't mean they're going to understand what you're saying. I think, I don't know, people sometimes are just, there's no other way to say it. They're just stupid. We just want to educate everybody so they know how to interact with our fellow human beings on this planet. That's all. That's all I'm saying. All right, listen, is there anything else that you would want the community to know before we
I
wrap
just
this thing
kind of
up?
wanted to add to the comment that you just said that like education is so important. Like a lot of people, it's not that they don't care, it's just that they don't know. And that's what my huge platform is about, is education. Like I definitely have some comments at times that you're kind of like, really, you know, but it gives me an opportunity to kind of change that, to be like, it's these, you know, myth busters. And, you know, a lot of people are like, can deaf people drive? And like, that was something I did the other day that I'm like, hey, like,
I
we got
saw that
eyes,
reel.
you know, like we're deaf, you know, not dumb. And then some people ask, you know, can deaf people read? And so there's some moments that you get that you're kind of like, but to somebody that doesn't understand, it's not that they're trying to be mean, it's just they don't know. And so I think a lot of people, it's so obvious to deaf people because we've been through it. But I try to take that opportunity to take a step back and realize that like everybody, and they start off with, I know this might be a dumb question. And I'm like, no question's a dumb question because you're trying to educate yourself. And I appreciate that.
Yeah, I like the way you put that too, because obviously I was making fun of those people to a certain degree, but it is important that they ask the question, and it's a good thing that they're asking, how do deaf people drive? You know, it's a good thing that they're asking. It means that they care, they're interested, and they're, you know, have a genuine curiosity. So that's all good. I just think about, there was a reel going around. I don't know if you've seen this one, McKinnon, but it's a it's a setup of this. A spouse or two buddies or whatever are asking the other one, if you were going to ask a blind man what they wanted to eat, or I have something to drink, how would you do it? And a lot of people will start signing stuff. They'll make all these gestures. And the big joke is our brains are processing things like, well, why would you do that? They're blind, they can hear you. So I think that sometimes our brains in the hearing world, we don't think about it logically. We have this preconceived idea. So I love the fact that you're bridging this gap. So let me just say thank you. Let me kind of end it on that note. Unless there's anything else you want to say, and this is your platform today, so you can say anything else. But I appreciate what you're doing because I think that you're bridging the gap between the hearing community and whether it's full on deaf or somebody or people that are like in between, partial deafness or whatever. I think that is absolutely awesome.
I just wanted to say thank you so much for having me on this platform. It's been really awesome, and thank you to everybody that's listening to this because that's my goal to spread education. So I really appreciate you having me on here, and I was very excited to come on here. So thank you.
You're welcome, and it was fun. And I warned you about this, and so here we go. I'm about to sign off. I was kind enough to prepare for this. I didn't want to freak her out, guys. But here we go. Athens, until next time. Go Dogs! Stick 'em!
Okay, guys, we did it. We made it to the end of the show. Now that you've heard at least one episode, can you do me a favor? If you know someone you would like to hear on a future episode, you can contact us or have them contact us at podcastjohng@gmail.com or just message us on our social media platforms or on Instagram, Facebook. Just search the Classic City Business Podcast. You'll find us. One more thing. Please like, rate, review, and share. All of this really helps a lot. We really do want to connect our community to the local business owner. We believe this is a great platform to do just that. And thank you for taking this ride with us as we get to know the people behind the sign. It's going to be a lot of fun. In Athens, until next time, I'm John G. and Go Dogs.